Hey, what's going on, sports car fans? This is Ray from Philly here on this Wednesday night, October the 7th. Welcome to another episode of Sports Car Talk. This here is episode number 13. We're just rolling right along here. And I'm joined by my co-host, Mike from This Baseball Car Life. Mike, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Ray.
Awesome. Are you excited tonight? I'm excited tonight.
Oh, I definitely am excited.
We have a very special guest with us on tonight. We have with us Mr. Michael Gibbons, who is the president of the Babe Ruth Birthplace Museum down in Baltimore, Maryland. Mr. Gibbons, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yeah.
Good to see you, boys. Let's get
Yeah.
on with this talk. Yeah, let's talk a little baseball, a little Babe Ruth, little
Absolutely.
baseball.
Can't go wrong with that. And like I said, I'm sporting the Babe Ruth Birthplace Museum. I was down there a couple years ago, so let's get to it. We're excited to have you on, Mike. Thank you so much.
No problem.
So, first question, since we kind of delved a little bit into baseball cards, we're going to hit everything with the museum and all that. And do you, Mike, did you ever collect baseball cards? If so, what players or sets or team did you ever get into?
Well, so I'm a product of growing up in the 1950s when Topps baseball cards were at their premium.
Right.
The most valuable Topps cards come from the early 50s to mid 50s and stuff like that. So as we were growing up with that, and you know the story, we put them in our bicycle spokes and we flipped them against the wall and traded them off and stuff like that. They really, they had no monetary value. They were just personal to us. So if I got Nelson Crosby's Mickey Mantle card, like flipping it against the wall, that was a big day for me, But that's how that went. There was now this is way off. It's slightly off target, but in 1955, Topps baseball cards came out with Davy Crockett trading cards.
Yeah.
Produced by Topps, and that was for a Walt Disney television serial on the Davy Crockett, and we all really got into that. I have, and there were two sets. There was a greenie set and an orangey set. I have both sets that I have collected over the years. So I'm a baseball guy, but for some reason, I stayed with the Davy Crockett, and that's what I have collected. I have multiple Oriole cards from the days, but now as a museum guy, we concentrate on Babe Ruth, the Baltimore Orioles, primarily within the baseball set.
Right.
So we have probably 10,000 baseball cards or more.
Wow.
We have volunteers cataloging our card set right now, but it's mostly and that's just Orioles mostly and Babe Ruth, and but it's amazing how many cards are out. Proliferation of cards over the years has gone through the roof, and as you two know better than me, the further we got into this, the more devalued the cards became as time went by. So from the 50s, when Topps baseball cards was everything, until the 1990s, when you had 15 card companies producing cards, 15 Cal Ripken cards, for 99, it devalued the whole process. So I think it's. Do you agree? Do you think that it's turning now back to having more value with fewer card producers?
I would like to see that happen, and I agree with you. I think less is more. The saturation is just it's crazy right now with all the different products. I mean, there's players out today that'll have 57 rookie cards.
Yeah.
Right.
It devalues it, in my opinion. Absolutely.
Yeah, it really does. I have my peers coming to me with cards, from 2010 on some player, and they go, "This is a rookie card. Is it worth anything?" And, and it's like, well, how many rookie cards do you have for this guy that year? And it's too many.
72.
Yeah, right. So anyway, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
All right. So us being baseball fans, we like to ask our guests, like, what was the best game you've ever been to, or a few games? I know you grew up in Baltimore, so must have liked seen a few Oriole games or Colts games in your day. It can be more than baseball.
Yeah. So I went to the very first Orioles home game ever at Memorial Stadium. I was 7 years old. What do I remember? I remember my father walking me up the ramp to get into the lower deck where we sat for that very first game. And I remember the green grass. You know, I was 7 years old. And, you know, so that was a big deal. And I remember a little bit about the game. The Orioles won 3-1 over the White Sox. So that was kind of cool. And but there are lots of important games. However, 1982, Earl Weaver was retiring at the end of the year.
Right.
The Orioles were behind the Milwaukee Brewers by 3 games, and they had a 4-game set at home against the Brewers, and they had to win all 4 to win the championship, the Eastern Division. They won the first 3. So we went out for game 4. If we win, Earl Weaver, who is the manager, who is retiring, he will continue into the playoffs. If we lose, it's Weaver's last game.
Right.
A sellout crowd. ABC covers the game nationally, and the Orioles lose 10-2. And however, the fans stayed. You know, 55,000 people stayed to cheer Weaver, who came out in post-game ceremonies and unrehearsed, and just stood there and accepted the cheers. Howard Cosell is on the microphone for ABC, and it was the most stunning thing I've ever seen in my life at a sporting event. So that is my game. I would think. You know, the closing of Memorial Stadium in 1991, the opening of Oriole Park in 92, big events. And I went to the only NFL championship game ever played in Baltimore. The Colts beat the Giants 1959, and I was there as a 12-year-old, and that was a big deal. You know,
it's a big game, yeah.
Yeah, there have been a lot of things. You know, as with any of us, we all have our moments. But I've got mine. But they would be they would be highlights for sure.
That's awesome.
What about the Cal Ripken record-breaking night there at Camden Yards?
Yeah, I didn't mention that. I was there, and that was special. You know, but that was a different kind of moment, wasn't it? Because we knew it was going to happen. It wasn't the outcome of an individual game where somebody's going to win and somebody's going to lose. Right. This was just an anticipated moment. So the buildup was incredible.
Yeah.
We had a lot to do with that. We, the museum, as the Orioles Museum, we worked with that. And quite frankly, for years in our Sports Legends Museum, the 2131 banners that hung off the warehouse, we hung in our museum for a long time. And so I have the pitching rubber from the 2131 game in our archives. So it's, we've got that stuff. But that was a special night. We all knew it was. And let me go back to connect Babe Ruth to what we're talking about. A lot of people feel that Cal Ripken's 2131 brought baseball back from the brink of 1994 when the World Series was canceled. And a lot of people think that Babe Ruth brought the game back from the 1919 Black Sox scandal with all of his home runs in 1920, in New York as a Yankee for the first year. So, these are profound baseball moments for sure. Ripken, Ruth. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. Well, speaking of Babe Ruth, we have you on. That's the main topic for today. Like, who was this guy for people who don't know a lot about him? And you're obviously an expert. So, who was he in general?
Yeah. Let me start by saying this. For 26 years, I taught a college writing course at a local university. Don't do it anymore, but I did it until 2013. I'm an old guy now. They don't want old guys over there
Yeah.
anymore. So, but as a way of introducing what I did for a day job, this was a night course. I would ask people, how many of you have ever heard of Babe Ruth? Raise your hand if you heard of Babe Ruth. And these are 20-year-old kids or whatever. And everybody would raise their hand. They've heard of Babe Ruth. Well, how many have, and this is 1989 or 88, something like that. How many have heard of Brooks Robinson? Now, we're in Baltimore. Everybody would raise their hand. As time went by, fewer and fewer people raised their hand about Brooks Robinson. No disrespect to Brooks, because he's one of the greatest.
Yep.
Everybody raised their hand with Babe Ruth. Now we get to 2013. Babe is dead how many years? 1948, 2013. How many have heard of Babe Ruth? Everybody raises their hand except one kid.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, where are you from? He goes, Nigeria.
Yeah.
And I said, all right, you're forgiven.
Yeah.
But to that point, everybody had heard of Babe Ruth. Now, some of the kids didn't know much about him. He was baseball, but that was kind of about it. But I think the point being that Ruth transcended at some point from being the greatest sports star of all time to being an American cultural icon, right?
Yeah.
He is part of Americana. He is like Marilyn Monroe or Martin Luther King or JFK. You know, it's Elvis Presley. He is in the greater cloud of iconosphere, and I think that he will always be there. When I say always, as long as we who are in the industry of protecting his legacy and perpetuating it, we do our job, because he is important to our sports culture, but also to the American culture as well. He's a really big deal. The greatest baseball player of all time. People say, how can you say that? And I say, because he has these incredible slugging statistics. He batted .342 lifetime, and he is regarded as one of the greatest left-handed pitchers in the history of Major League Baseball. 94 wins. And you know, I was talking to you before we went on the air here. In 1915, his first full season with the Red Sox as a pitcher, he went 18-8 with a 2.44 ERA and led the Red Sox to the World Series championship that year. He did it again in 1916 and again in 1918. So, I mean, you know, he was this remarkable pitcher. Unfortunately for his pitching side, he just happened to be the all-time slugger in the history of the game. So yeah, he's the guy. He's the guy.
Well, I work at a university, and I asked a student today who's, you know, right around 20 years old, and I says, have you ever heard of this guy, Babe Ruth? And she's like, oh yeah, my dad talks to me about this guy. So it's still out there. I mean, these students, I asked them on purpose because, you know, we were going to talk tonight, and yeah, the legacy is still continuing throughout baseball. So
it is. And, you know, I will tell you this also from my perspective, which is limited now. I mean, I'm not on the main line of MLB information flow, but I believe that Major League Baseball players to this day hold Babe Ruth to be the standard of Major League Baseball achievement. So that if you beat a Babe Ruth record, and he had 206 Major League records, most of which have been broken. But when you go by Babe Ruth, it's a big deal, you know. And we have had players over the time that I've been at the museum, which is 38 years, acknowledge to us. By the way, I just went by Babe Ruth on the all-time Yankees doubles list, says Derek Jeter, and here are my batting gloves from the game when I went by him. You know, that kind of stuff.
He is a standard. He is a standard of excellence. So
he is.
If you go above that, you did something incredible. Absolutely.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So Anyway, that's all good stuff. We just a couple of days ago entertained the people who run the Shoeless Joe Jackson Museum, and I think it's in South Carolina, and where he grew up. And Shoeless Joe it was influential in Babe Ruth's development as a batter, and Shoeless Joe was ahead of Babe in his major league tenure, and evidently the story goes gave Babe one of his bats and said, here, because Babe didn't have his own model bat yet, and said, try this out, Babe. And we have that bat on display at the Babe Ruth Museum. And, Ruth ultimately did not go with a thick-handled Shoeless Joe model. He went with a thinner-handled bat. But anyway, it's a cute story. And we use artifacts to interpret the stories that our mission encompasses. And, that's what museum work is all about.
So I heard that you started around 80, 82 with the museum, and what is that, 38 years? Like, what keeps you, and that's pretty much a whole career of someone. So like, what got you to, stick with this for so long? I mean, I would, because, I love baseball. I just, am curious. It's just, you dedicated your career to this man.
Yeah. So I started off, my professional background was that prior to Babe Ruth in 1982, I was a documentary producer, and I'm an old musician. My band still plays actually since 1964. That's pretty cool. So I like the arts. I like history, and I love baseball. And so when I was introduced to the Babe Ruth Museum, and actually in 1981, I was doing a documentary on Babe Ruth. I went down there to do some research, just checking myself out, and met the people there. They were having trouble drawing fans. And so I got involved. I thought, well, and I knew a little bit about Babe Ruth. Like your students do. I knew that Babe Ruth is a really famous guy, and that he was from Baltimore. I knew that. So I got involved, and I decided that I was going to volunteer to figure out a way to draw more attendance to make them financially viable, to make the museum viable. And the plan that we came up with was to become the Orioles Museum, because Babe Ruth was signed by the minor league Baltimore Orioles,
right?
14, by Jack Dunn. He became Jack Dunn's baby in spring training, and that became Babe Ruth before they left spring training in Fayetteville, North Carolina. And so that's how we got going. I told, and the museum foundation board said, well, so you figured out how to bring more people in here. Will you stay for 1 year and just help us get on our feet? And I said, okay, as long as I can continue to do documentaries on my own. And they said, that's fine. And I got sucked in. Museum work is great, because you know what we do? We tell stories. We interpret stories. And everybody loves stories. The three of us love stories. We love to be told them. We love to tell them. That's what human beings do.
Right.
And so it's just been a fascinating ride. I still have huge passion, even though I'm semi-retired now. I'm an emeritus guy. I'm old, and but it's a lot of fun. And you know what? What the heck? I like living my life this way, because I'm doing what I care about.
Right.
Yeah. Awesome.
That's the most important thing.
All right. Now I'm going to move down to question 2, Ray. And I was going to go over this. Now I'm just going to say a few names here, and if you just talk about kind of what comes to mind. First is Christy Walsh.
Christy Walsh, the first agent for athletes, and a real innovator. A guy who knew his marketplace and had huge energy always trying to come up with a new angle. But he was like the consummate PR guy, from today. So we think public relations, and we all know what PR guys do today. But back then, he was helping to invent public relations. And so when he was able to connive Babe Ruth into joining up with him, it was the beginning of a string of successes that led Christy Walsh to become this pretty famous, entrepreneur on the American business scene. And but he negotiated so many firsts. So he got the first player agent contract. He negotiated to have Babe Ruth have the first merchandise created after the name of after an athlete,
right.
and things like that. So I think that he was part and parcel to putting Babe Ruth on the iconic American map that he ultimately penetrated. So Christy Walsh is really important, hugely influential in establishing Ruth's financial security. It was like, babe, we got to put money away because every cent you get, you're spending. Now, Babe Ruth is back in the 20s when Christy Walsh met him, is making 80 times more than anybody else. He's making huge amounts of money, but he's spending it all. So just, giving money to people, buying cars for Brother Matthias at St. Mary's Industrial School, and whatever, just footing the bill for everything. Walsh said, nope, you got to stop doing that. We're going to give you an allowance, and we're going to invest a portion of your annual earnings into long-term investments, which they did, and that secured Ruth's financial future. And so Walsh it's like George Martin with the Beatles.
Oh yeah.
If George Martin doesn't show up for the Beatles, they're still the most talented foursome in the history of music. But George Martin pointed them in the right direction and contributed to their talented overseeing. So it was great. Next name.
The next name is Lou Gehrig, 8 years younger than Babe.
Yeah, baby. So Gehrig, something's just popped out on him. Have you heard the interview that the radio recording where Gehrig talks about the called shot home run? Yeah. Was it October 3rd? Is it the 3rd? 1932. Or maybe it's the 1st. I can't remember. I don't have my stuff in front of me. But anyway, Babe Ruth calls his shot at Wrigley Field in Game 3 of the 1932 World Series. Gehrig is on deck. Now, I have seen written reports of Gehrig's reaction to the called shot home run, where he says, well, that big monkey, he said he was going to go up there and do that, and he did. He called his shot. So I've seen that in print, but now they have this recording of Gehrig. This is within the last 2 days, saying precisely that he called his shot, and it's really good stuff. So Gehrig, a remarkable athlete, the Iron Horse, man, Cal Ripken, he's one of the 10 greatest baseball players of all time for sure. And, the barnstorming that the friendship that Ruth and Gehrig had until the fallout, which included their regular season shenanigans and then the barnstorming that they did. And if you've read The Big Fella, which you referenced with Jane Levy, and she takes you, she bases her chapter sequencing on that barnstorming season after the 1927 season, where they had the great home run race between Gehrig and Ruth. Ruth wins, and but those two were pretty close. They were very different individuals morally, I think. intellectually, but certainly athletically, they were similar. They were
Right.
great baseball players. They were great sluggers, great Hall of Famers. But so Gehrig is important, and I think when the fallout occurred between Mrs. Claire Ruth and Mrs. Gehrig, that it was a tragedy for both guys. Babe tried to, and maybe successfully, ended it when Gehrig announced his retirement, in 1939. But that was a bad way to end a great relationship between the greatest slugging tandem in the history of the game. That's for sure.
Right. Easily.
Yeah. All right. Babe Ruth's daughter, one of them, Julia Ruth Stevens, who you've interviewed in the past many times.
Was a dear friend of mine, a dear friend. I knew Julia for many years and spent a lot of time with her. She came to Baltimore a lot. She was treated like royalty. Fans flocked to come to see her, do interviews at either our Babe Ruth Museum or Sports Legends Museum. Hundreds, thousands of people would come out to see her. She was a great ambassador for her father and for the game. She called him daddy. She loved him. She told intimate stories of their time together. She often would cite that their favorite radio program every Sunday night in the off season when they were together, they would go into the family room and listen to the radio, and their favorite show was The Lone Ranger. And so incredibly, we were able to find Clayton Moore's, the television show, not the radio show, but we found Clayton Moore's original Lone Ranger costume from the TV show in the 50s, and we put it on display at the Babe Ruth Museum, and thousands of people flocked to see because it was Babe Ruth's favorite show, and they came to see Clayton Moore, and that was really good. But Julia remained on duty for her father until the very end. She died last year at the age of 102.
102.
Yeah. 102.
Yeah,
wow.
There's debate about that. It may have been 103, but we'll say 102. And she was pretty much with it until maybe the last 6 months, and which is just remarkable. But a tremendous spirit, loved her father. She's an adopted child, the daughter of Claire, Babe's second wife, and Babe adopted her. But just so terrific for the game. I used to take her to Oriole games, and we'd go up in the broadcast booth, and she'd be interviewed by Jim Palmer or Mike Flanagan, and Cal Ripken would hang up with her, and she could talk the game. They would say, "Well, who do you root for? Do you root for the Red Sox or the Yankees?" "I hate those Yankees. I root for the Red Sox because the Yankees, in her opinion, they cut him loose and didn't shot and all that stuff." So, but she was just a live wire, a wonderful woman.
All right.
Well, the next person we have on the list is Mamie Ruth Moberly, which is Babe's sister.
Yeah. I've had the privilege and pleasure of interviewing her multiple times. She died in 1992, I believe. So I hung out with her from 82 to 92, pretty much. And she was kind of failing in those years. She was old, in her late 80s and stuff like that. And so I did multiple interviews, and you never knew what you were going to get. But from time to time, she would come up with a gem of information. For instance, she, in one interview, would say that she and her mother would go to visit Babe Ruth at St. Mary's Industrial School, which was kind of, a reformatory school for incorrigibles or orphans or different things. And the kids who went to the school were called inmates. And so Mamie said that she and her mother would take the trolley and go out to St. Mary's Industrial School, about a 3-mile journey from where they lived in the city. And they would be escorted into a giant hall where they would be seated at a table, and that her brother, George, would be escorted in by a guard and be seated at the table. And they would have a designated, specified amount of time, maybe 15, 20 minutes, to have a discussion on a Sunday. And then he would be taken from the room and they would be escorted back out.
Wow.
So really, according to her, kind of like a prison.
Like a prison.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so that puts a little bit of foundation into, our understanding of where Babe Ruth came from, as he emerged onto the world in 1914 as a professional with the Baltimore Orioles.
Wow.
I think that it wasn't all bleak and grim. He learned how to play the game of baseball, from Brother Matthias, but nevertheless, I don't think it was, an idyllic childhood for this. Yeah.
Yep. Any other people that knew Babe Ruth that you've interviewed in the past that you want to chat about right now?
We could be all night on this.
Yeah. Okay.
So
Yeah.
we're not going to be all night on this.
No, we're not.
But I interviewed Paul Hopkins, who, and this was back in 1995, I think. He threw the 59th home run pitch to Babe Ruth, and he remembers it as the most significant pitch he ever threw in his major league career. He's with the Washington Senators, and so Paul Hopkins, he throws home run number 59, and I got that interview. That was good. That was really good. I also interviewed a guy who was a Marylander, and his rookie appearance in the major leagues was to come in as a relief pitcher for the Boston Red Sox. And his name was Edgar Carroll, and he faced Babe Ruth. Imagine this. He's with the Red Sox. He comes in, rookie pitcher, never been in the major league, comes in to face Ruth with the bases loaded and 2 out or whatever. And he gave up a grand slam home run.
Yeah.
And it's the most significant moment of his major league career.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and that's kind of the way it is. All these guys who we've interviewed, and they're all gone by now. I've been around long enough so that I was able to get them. I interviewed Mel Allen when he started with the Yankees. His first duty with the Yankees was to be Babe Ruth's personal chauffeur.
Wow.
And I can't tell you what Mel told me. But, anyway, so they're there. And, that in this business, the business that you're in now, sports is an integral part of the American culture. I remember years ago, we honored Gary Williams, the Hall of Fame basketball coach of the University of Maryland men's team. And we honored Gary one night. We had about 1,200 people in the building, and we had like 17 of his former players came back and stuff. And after the event, Gary came up to me and he said, I got to thank you, Mike, because, in sports, coaches and players and all of us, we all look forward to the next game. But tonight, you gave us the opportunity to look backwards. Nice. And he said it's important. And in the museum industry, sports museum, we think it's important that the heritage, the legacy of all of this matters to the American population. It does count. News, weather, sports, we all share sports and weather in common. Yeah. We're not so much on the news, especially. Anyway.
All right. So we're going to transition to memorabilia, and I'd like for you to tell the story about the Babe Ruth's hymnal.
Hymnal story, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. before I got on the scene, the Babe Ruth, the building of the Babe Ruth birthplace, which is one of four row houses. So it's a stretch of four, row houses. They were being considered for demolition. This is back in the mid to late 60s. And they were going to renovate this community called Ridgely's Delight, which is literally 2 blocks today from Oriole Park at Camden Yards. That's kind of cool. And so as that project was going on, a engineer went to St. Mary's Industrial School, where Babe Ruth had been. And this is in the 60s. And they were getting ready to convert that property into a high school called Cardinal Gibbons High School.
Uh-huh.
So the engineers go in and they start checking out the buildings that were there to see structurally if they were okay. And they go into one building and they took out some floorboards to look down to see how the joists were holding up and if there was any termite damage and stuff like that. So they take up this one floorboard and they found a little brown pamphlet, and it was a hymnal from St. Mary's Industrial School, set it on the cover, and they opened it, and on the inside cover, there was an inscription, and it said, George H. Ruth, world's worst singer, world's best pitcher. So the engineer that finds it, he's like, wow, that's pretty cool. So he took it to a woman who was working on the committee to restore the Babe Ruth birthplace. Okay. The part of that project.
Right.
Yeah.
And he said, would you like to have this when you open the building? Maybe you could show it off. And she said, thank you very much. And she took it. And they put it on display. When they opened the building in 1974, the hymnal was there. When I got there in 1982, I learned about the hymnal and stuff. And as time went by, I got to thinking about it. And I thought, you know what? This may be the oldest surviving signature of Babe Ruth, right?
True. Yeah.
George H. Ruth, world's first singer, world's best pitcher. So I floated out that possibility to a variety of people. And I had an FBI handwriting forensic specialist come to me, and he did this big study on that signature, George H. Ruth. And even though it was written probably in 1908 or 1909 or so Babe is, like 10, 12 years old or whatever. So you know how your handwriting was when you were 10 or 12 years old. Not the same as it is today.
Right.
Probably better, actually.
Yeah.
And so the FBI guy determined that it was an absolute authentic signature, not because it totally matched the way that his adult signature looked, but because some of the letters did look the way that they looked, when he became an adult. So he put together like a 200-page, synopsis of this, and came to the conclusion that it was authentic. So that now the unfortunate part is that for many years that hymnal stayed on exhibit, and it was the inscription was written in pencil on a brown flyleaf of the hymnal, and it began to fade, and we pulled it off display at 15 years ago and put up a facsimile of it in its place so that people could see what it looked like. But today it's virtually gone.
Wow.
It's still there, but it lives in a dark closet, and it can never be put on display again. But it is the oldest surviving autograph of Babe. And I would venture to say, guys, that Babe Ruth has the most famous autograph
Oh yeah,
in the history of the world.
without a doubt.
Yeah.
I think that has to be true.
Absolutely.
So, anyway, yeah, there you go.
Well-
That's the story of the hymnal.
So how does the Baseball Hall of Fame and the Babe Ruth Hall of Fame regarding like memorabilia, how does that relationship work?
Terrific. We get along great with those guys. We help each other with programming. Not it depends on what's going on.
Okay.
Several years ago, the Smithsonian did a special exhibit on Babe Ruth, and I know that Cooperstown participated. We participated. We have sent things to them. They've sent things to us. It just depends on whatever your theme is. But our cooperation with the hall traditionally has been very strong. They have a guy up there right now who is our main go-to guy, Tom Schreiber, and Tommy is a Babe Ruth historian at the top level. And so
Okay.
if he finds out something new about Babe, he's going to be in touch with us, and vice versa.
Wow,
Awesome.
great. Do you have any players you'd like to share, any player stories you'd like to share that have visited the Babe Ruth Museum, like say Cal Ripken or anyone like that?
Well, a lot have, that's for sure. Well, Cal's first visit to the Babe Ruth Museum, as we were the Orioles Museum, back in 1991. He came over. He has participated over the years with us in a variety of events. I can't say most of the ball players, but as many have done. Frank Robinson, Brooks Robinson, Jim Palmer, Boog Pat, from the Baltimore Colts, Johnny Unitas. We are the Colts Museum. Johnny Unitas donated his entire collection to us.
Awesome.
Raymond Berry. So it's just, it's a funny industry. I would say in today's world, with today's athletes, they're harder to engage because they're more insulated than they were when I first got involved,
right
back in the very early 80s. Back then, I don't know if you guys know the name of Artie Donovan. He was a Hall of Fame Baltimore Colt.
Funny guy.
And, on Johnny Carson all the time and stuff like that. But Artie was always there for us whenever we needed him. Brooks Robinson, we're getting ready to put some incredible Brooks Robinson artifacts on display at the museum. His 1966 World Series ring. And in 1970, he was the MVP of the World Series.
Right.
When he was proclaimed the human
vacuum.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, the MVP trophy will be on display at the museum probably by next week. So it's those kind of relationships that you look for. Among today's ball players with the Orioles, because we're the Orioles Museum, Trey Mancini, who has been battling cancer this year. Trey came to the museum a couple of years ago as a rookie. Did a great interview, huge crowd, and a wonderful guy, just a terrific fella. So, they come and they stay involved. What I will tell you, it's interesting, is not a lot of athletes on their own will just pop over to a sports museum. It's not their priority. It's like Gary Williams said, we're always looking forward to the next game.
Right.
We don't look, and especially for young guys, they're not looking back for the most part. Some do, but most, when they get older, they come around.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. I'd love to see modern players, like say star Mike Trout, like pick up a bat from the 20s and 30s and try to do some BP, with it, or catch fly balls with a big, I saw a video you did with Lefty Grove's glove.
Nice.
You held one of those and it was ginormous. It was just incredible. I just wish they would do that, kind of, you know, to compare eras so they can
Mhm.
really understand a bit more about baseball
Right.
in the 20s and 30s and stuff. So
Right.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah, I think, and you know, to talk about the eras, um, I think that um, they they remain comparable because the game has been fairly constant.
Mhm.
You know, there've been changes, but for the most part, it's still 60 feet 6 inches,
Yep.
90-foot base paths, etc.
Mhm.
And you know, the dimensions of the ballparks have changed. The athletes have grown more athletic and much stronger and bigger and stuff like that. But really, the tenets of the game are pretty much the same. And I think that Babe Ruth, if he played today, would dominate.
yeah,
I think
I
that he would
agree.
dominate.
Yep.
I think that um, the three of us have no idea what it was like to be in America when Babe Ruth
Mhm.
overwhelmed the
Mhm.
culture
Right.
Mhm.
in 1918, 1919,
Right.
1920. I mean, he's the spirit he's part of the fuel that
Mhm.
spirited the Roaring Twenties.
Right.
Uh, when
Yeah.
the Beatles hit here in 1964, that's the closest we've come.
Right.
Or
And
maybe
I
JFK.
agree.
I mean, and listen, these are once in a lifetime experiences. There'll never be another Babe Ruth.
I
There
agree.
in sports.
You
There'll never
made
be another one of them. There'll never be another Beatles
nope.
because it's already happened.
Right.
It's
yeah,
or when he hit on the scene, nobody saw it coming.
Right.
They were overwhelmed like a tidal wave, like a tsunami,
Right.
and God darn it, we weren't there to see it ourselves.
yeah,
Which is too bad because
But
it must have been pretty cool.
you're absolutely right because I think with the bat today is more livelier, let's say, and the ball is more juiced and livelier, and the ballparks are smaller. I agree. I think Babe, Babe could have hit 70, 80 homers in today's era, without a doubt,
yeah,
because it's a lot easier to hit a home run today.
Oh my God. Yeah, it is.
They
And
played in a
remember,
dead ball era. The ball was not jumping off the bat back then.
that's it. That's exactly right. So, yeah, Bill Jenkinson, who is a renowned Babe Ruth scholar, you know, wrote a book a few years ago saying, you know, that if Ruth played today, he'd have hit 104 home runs. And you know what? I don't
Probably.
debate that. You
yeah,
know, it's probable because if he was an athlete today with his hand-eye coordination and his extraordinary uh, you know, the bat speed
Hmm.
and things like that, he would have been in shape as
Yeah.
today's player, right? I
Yep.
mean, he would have
Yep.
been
yeah,
like everybody else, I would
Yep.
think. So, yeah, there's no question
Yep.
that he would have been extraordinary, and I just can't imagine what he would have made.
yeah,
They're already making silly money, so who knows?
Write a
yeah.
check.
Yeah, he wouldn't have had that like Santa Claus looking belly, you know, he had when he was finishing his
Right.
career. And,
Yeah.
you know,
That's
think
right.
about supplements and
Yeah.
nutritionists, and he would have flown by, you know, plane everywhere instead of sitting on a train.
Mm.
And just, it's just incredible to even think about those giant stadiums
Hmm.
that he played in, where the
Yeah.
fence was like 457 in center field, and just
Yep.
all those fly balls that went 400 feet.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I really appreciate you coming on, Michael. It was a lot of fun learning about the history of the museum. I've been there before, and I plan on going back many, many times. If you just want to tell the people like exactly where you're located and when you're open, are during the COVID right now, are you back in business, right? You're open.
So the museum during this pandemic is open Friday, Saturday, and Sunday
Okay.
from 10 to 4. And you can go to our website to get information, baberuthmuseum.org,
Okay.
and just check it out, see what's going on. But yeah, we're there.
Cool.
And you know, I think that we're all hopeful that
Hmm.
perhaps by next spring we will have figured something out
Hmm.
so that people get back to a state of normalcy, and that hopefully we can get back to the ballparks.
Absolutely.
Guys like you can come down
Yeah, absolutely.
to an Orioles game
Yeah.
and stop by the birthplace. But you know, for all of the cultural attractions, everything in the entertainment industry, from restaurants to museums to whatever, we're all in a rough spot. Everybody's in a rough spot right now, but the museum is doing okay. We have a lot of support, you know, from our advocates, and that certainly counts. And we have a new exhibit down at the museum right now. So hopefully, as time goes by, we're going to be able to get people down there, and you know,
Cool.
and thank you guys for promoting us. So you know,
Yeah.
but yeah, we're there for you. So come on
Great.
down and take a look and see the story of the greatest player the game has ever produced.
Yep.
The great Bambino. Thank you so much, Mr. Gibbons, for being on tonight. It was a great pleasure to have you on the history of the museum of the greatest player in the history of the game, Mr. Babe Ruth. So thank you so much.
Yeah, it's been an honor. Thank you for your time tonight.
And
All
Mike
right.
and Ray, you're good guys. Keep
Thank
up
you,
the
sir.
work.
Thank
All right,
you.
man.
You
All
got
right.
it. Take care.
All right. Good night.
Bye-bye.